Hi everybody, my name is Andy Chan and I'm an RCIC. It's right now early March 2022. If you're new to my channel, welcome. What I've done is I created an Excel model for the various calculations for the various economic programs that are in Canada. I first created this back in I think 2019. Now I think of it, when I was studying to become an RCIC, and I realized, the federal programs, you have the federal skilled worker scoring, then you get the express entry scoring, and I thought, well, all that is very similar. So what I started to do is I put that together, plus qualifications for the Canadian experience class, federal skilled trade, and then I realized, well, the provincial programs, they're fairly similar too. So what I try to do is I tried to put in one set of data entry that you put in your age, your language scoring, and your work experience, and obviously some of the other questions. And with that, within one file, you can create reports for all the various programs. This is the third version of the file, and so what I've done is I've gone back, refreshed some of the logic, and so right now what I've done in particular is I brought in the some of the Ontario calculations that I have. And Ontario, I think there's 8 different programs. So I've brought in the calculations to create just 6 different reports for 6 of the programs that I've covered. And if you can't tell, I'm winging this. I don't have really a set script. I do have obviously a set of PowerPoint slides, uh, but um, but I don't really have anything written down. I'm just going by my slide deck that I created. So I don't know which order I'll be posting these, but I do give the file away for free. And again, this is meant for other practitioners because it's not something that I don't think an individual should be, using an Excel file to calculate their own thing, because there's a lot of underlying reasoning behind the calculations that only a certified practitioner would really understand. Okay, so what I'll do is in this particular video, I'll talk about the French speaking worker stream. So again, I've just put in Ontario. So this will be one of the 6 I'll be uploading in early March. So I don't know which one you'll see first. It really depends if I decide to maybe redo something. Okay, so let me just get started. So again, this is the French speaking stream. Okay, so the French speaking stream is is actually in a lot of ways fairly straightforward. There's almost no, actually no, there is no new data entry per se. What it does is it evaluates your qualifications based on federal skilled worker or the Canadian experience class. But what Ontario does is, as opposed to the federal skilled worker qualifications, where it'll look for your work experience, continuous work experience for the last 10 years. In the Ontario Federal Skilled Worker Program calculation, it only looks at the last 5 years. So that's slightly different. And I actually asked a couple of different RCICs, and it seems like I am a pretty new RCIC. I'm not an Ontario practitioner, but what I'm doing is I'm going by the requirements that are posted online on the Ontario web page for the French speaker stream. Okay, so again, one little difference between the federal skilled worker and the Ontario one is that the Ontario federal skilled worker calculation for the French speaking stream only looks at the last 5 years. So it's either you look at the federal skilled worker, or you look at the Canadian experience class. Okay, so let me just take you to the web page right now, and I'll show you what I mean. Let me see here. Let me go over here. Okay, so so this is the web page for the French speaking stream, and if you can tell from the slide deck, that actually put it on the URL on this, put that URL on this on the slide deck too. But this is the web page for the French speaking stream, and again, it's one of the 6 that I'm covering. So under stream requirements, it either looks at the federal skilled worker program or the Canadian experience class. And unlike the federal skilled worker requirement, you look at the last 5 years versus 10. And it is continuous work. Either that, or come down here, you look at the Canadian experience class. And here there's no difference to the time frame. I'm trying to use the right terminology, to the time frame. So you look at the work, the cumulative work for the last 3 years, and under federal skilled worker, it's continuous. Okay, so and again, there's one little difference there. Now let me just go back to the slide deck, and I highlighted one of the issues. Let me just go back here. Okay, so one of the issues is in the Ontario French speaking stream, and I think it's all in all the Ontario streams that I've encountered. How they define qualifying part-time equivalent work experience is a little different. In Ontario, if you're trying to count part-time hours, you have to work at least 15 hours per week. Whereas, if you look at the federal one, and let me just go back to the web page. Oops. Ontario. Sorry, under Ontario, it says, and I highlighted on the slide deck, for at least 15 hours per week. Whereas in the federal one, let me see if I can find the right section here. Skilled work experience. And on the federal skilled worker page, under how they define part-time work experience, it says for part-time work, you can work more or less than 15 hours per week. So that is quite a bit different. And so there's two differences there. Is the time duration for federal skilled worker is up to 5 years for an Ontario, and what Ontario is willing to count for qualified hours under part-time. So that's one of the big differences there. And you know, I'm sort of jumping around a bit. The other thing off the top of my head is that under the federal skilled worker program, the Canadian one, and actually in Ontario, I'm not entirely sure. And I asked around. The language under ERPR section 80 is that the work experience for federal skilled worker for the points. Let's see if I can find it on this page here, work experience points. Even if you look at the actual regulations section, it doesn't actually say whether these points, it has to be continuous or cumulative. And I asked around, and nobody seems to have a clear answer. So I may need to double back on this particular calculation in the Excel file. So please do, if you are using the Excel file, thank you. do pick up the latest version, because hopefully a little later on I'll know the firm answer one way or the other. Okay, so let me just go back to the slide deck really quick. Sorry, I realized I had the wrong focus. The video tool I'm using is a little rough, so. But anyways, let me just come back to here. The work experience under the federal skilled worker, it can be greater or less than 15 hours per week. But what I was talking about is nowhere in here, or I thought I had the page up here. This is section 80 of the regulations for the points, and nowhere, it really doesn't seem to say anywhere whether the points calculation is based on cumulative or continuous work. So let me just go back to the slide deck now. Okay, so let me pick that up. So again, yeah, so I wanted to mention that in the Excel file, I'm not really evaluating this, and the problem is for me to evaluate it, I'm using a macro to calculate continuous work, because, and now actually let me go back to the Excel file now, just to get really confusing. So in the Excel file, I have a data entry area for work. And to try to make it as, I guess accurate as possible, I have a grid, so you can enter in different, each row represents a different employer. And so what I've tried to do is, if you have a start date and an end date and another start date and end date, what the macro does is it tries to tie multiple rows of work together. If your start date and the end date of two different rows actually can be combined into one continuous row. So that's how I'm evaluating the continuous work. That was the only way I could figure out how to do it. For cumulative work, it's pretty easy. I'm just adding up the hours. So with this new wrinkle with Ontario, because I first designed this for the Canadian Federal Skilled Worker Program without the 15-hour qualification, I decided not to put it into this version, because if I put it in here, firstly, I'm doing this to validate another tool I'm trying to create. But secondly, I thought, well, if it is under 15 hours, maybe you shouldn't even put that row of data into the grid in the first place. So I may come back to it if I have time, but just to be aware of that. And again, if you're comfortable modifying this file on your own, then again, I'm giving away for free. Please go ahead and do so. Okay, so let me just go back to the slide deck. Okay, so I think I've almost covered everything off the slide deck. Okay, so again, presuming that you're new to this series, the yellow cells represents data entry. So this is like a zoomed out view of the model. So again, this in the yellow cells, I'll prompt for you can enter in your birth date, your language scoring, and your work experience, and some of the other questions in the various programs. Inside the grid for work experience, the data entry cells are also in yellow, and then off to the right are some gray cells, and I use gray cells to indicate formulas that are used to calculate different time durations of work experience. And what I mean by that is, For example, Canadian Experience Class 3 counter lasts 3 years, federal skilled trade 5 years, federal skilled worker 10 years. And in this case, because I've added Ontario now, um, uh, the Ontario Federal Skilled Workers 5 years, that which aligns with federal skilled trade. So I've multiple columns to calculate the right duration, the number of hours worked for that duration of time. Um, Probably more clear how in my explanation in a previous video actually. So, but that's how it basically works. Okay, let me go back. And again, oh, continuous work. Yeah, so, this is this might be a little easier to explain. So, what I've got is a macro. So if the macro sees two lines with the same knock, and where the end date is aligned to the next start date, then I'll calculate that as one continuous amount of number of hours of work. Okay. And the how I do that, there's a button that's sort of buried below where the grid is. I might clone this button into other spots, but it's below that that data entry grid. And again, the 50 hours per week, I'm not evaluating. The language requirement, I am evaluating because, oh, sorry. So overall, the French skilled workers, the French skilled stream, basically just two requirements: your language scoring and your work experience. And the report. Okay, so let me just actually no, let me just cover this. So on the web page, there's other criteria and some other calculations, like for example settlement funds. I'm not really give a yay or nay. That doesn't really. I haven't really incorporated that calculation and some of the other calculations in the model. Okay, so here's an image of the actual report. I try to look for something. I try to look for something online that's indicative of what could be submitted. So basically, this is how I've laid out a report for the French skilled worker stream. So let me take you to the Excel file. Okay, so here's the Excel file. So the data entry is in yellow again for work, and so I'll scroll up. Again, if this confuses you, do try to watch the other videos in the series. So your language scoring is here. The formulas for the French scoring is over here, and I use this for the French worker stream. Down here are some other calculations. For example, education, which is not in this particular stream, but used in some other ones. This is key, primary occupation. This is used for the calculation. Here's the grid, which is I've spent quite a few minutes now trying to explain this, but this is the grid that has your start date, end date, your knock code, your hours, and again, this is when I mentioned the gray area. These are the formulas that I was talking about, where this formula here calculates the number of hours within the duration of the last 2 years. And this is the last 3 and the last 5. And here's 10. And the reason why I have so many different calculations is because for the various P&P programs, what I do is I take the number of hours worked for that duration first, then I apply additional filters below that. And so if you ever want to see where these formulas go, go into formulas, trace D dependence, and I'll drop in these little arrows for you. Okay. Let's scroll back up here. So that's the layout of the file. So let me take you to the Ontario tab. So this is new, and it's early March 2022. So again, I'm covering these 6 streams. And I'm just going. When you see this, you may see this in a different order, but there's no new no new data entry, but everything you see here is based on pre-existing data. So you have the principal occupation that's driven from this tab here. That's driven from this cell here. It's just a cell reference. Okay. Same with the education. There's an education requirement here. Okay. And then the federal school worker. Now here, so here, it's just a cell reference to the federal school worker calculation that's driven by this macro. And again, I probably cloned this a few places. So you maybe see multiple buttons. This button in other places, but it'll run the same macro. What I had to do is I had to modify the macro so it calculates the continuous work for multiple lines for the last 5 years of work, in addition to the existing calculation for the last 10 years of work. So these 2 calculations are new. Okay, and the cumulative work is just a just a formula, and it's just summarizing the existing calculations for the Canadian Experience class for the last 2 years, and it's up here. Okay. There's a English requirement, and again, these are just formulas. English and French requirement, and these are just formulas based on the data entry for language that you've keyed in. Oh, my mouse pad's going a little crazy. That you've keyed in when you enter it in up around this area. So again, I explained it in a previous video how you can click on this drop down, choose a language, enter in the scoring, and all the formulas down here calculate out the various points or the CLB level. For Ontario, what I've got is I've got another formula down here where it actually figures out, okay, which of the 2 rows, if you selected one, is your French score. So I think that's actually it. I think I've covered everything in this particular stream. So again, there's no real new data entry to calculate everything out. So here's the calculation that I've done, and again, I'm matching it up to what I found over. Let me get back to that page. I don't know why it does that. Let me get it back to this page. And so I'm matching up what the various qualifications, the requirements that I found on this page. So again, it's your work experience, and I think there's an education requirement. And it's just, the whether you have it or not. So here's the federal work experience, only within the last 5 years. Canadian experience class, not really much of a change. I'm not evaluating whether the part-time hours is greater than 15 hours per week here, and education. So you must have a Canadian bachelor's, master's, or its equivalent. Okay, so that's just a data entry. So I've taken all that. Yes, the language requirement, French CLB7. And so basically, I've taken all that and I've basically formatted that information in this particular area on this tab. In the future, I might break it out into different tabs for Ontario because I'm covering 6. But keep in mind, and I mentioned this a few times, if you click on unhide, I actually am bringing in the other PNP programs for the other provinces too. So when you click on the download button in this description, it's not like I'm like deleting the previous calculations. So the later the version that you're downloading, it will have more tabs hidden. I'm just hiding them just to keep the cosmetics a little cleaner. Oh, and what I've started doing is I've put in a new tab with a change log, so that you see what this particular version has. Okay, so thank you for your attention. This went on a little longer than I thought. So again, this particular video is talking about the French skilled worker stream for the Ontario PNP. It's early March 2022. It'll be one of 6 videos that I'm creating for Ontario. Thank you for your patience. If you have any questions, please let me know, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. I do thank a couple of people that are helping me evaluate everything, and they made some really good suggestions actually. So I really do appreciate that. If you have any questions, if you're a practitioner, please feel free to reach out to me, and I'll try my best to answer you. Thank you very much. Bye bye.